I have Wi-Fi upstairs, but I don't know.
All I have to do.
The 1, 2, 3, 4.
There's Santos in as well. No, you've got 7 now because Brian Santos came in. Mike Krogel is with John Lenke, so there's 2 on that line. And you are being recorded, ladies and gentlemen.
Excellent, thank you. So good evening. Call this meeting of the Town of Thompson Planning and Zoning Commission Subcommittee on Regulation Rewrite to order. It is Tuesday, June 16th, 2020 at 6 p.m. We are meeting on Zoom, and this meeting is being recorded. We will begin with a roll call of those commissioners present. Mr. Lenke.
John B. Lenke, present.
Mr. Krogel.
Mike Krogel, present.
Mr. Werge.
Present.
Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill, present.
Ms. Langlois.
Darlene Langlois, present.
Mr. Santos.
Brian Santos, present.
And Joseph Perotti Brown is present. Okay, we move then to the to the discussion guide that we have before us. And I apologize as I look for what I was looking for, and here it is. Great, excellent. Okay, the first item is on page 26 of the regulations, and it has to do with frontage and setback requirements. And
Neither of the commenters from the public are in the participants list, so there's no one to address about it particularly, well, except Cindy.
And this is, to be clear, this is in the rural residential district?
Yes.
Rural residential agricultural, yep. And so we've got the proposed frontage 100 with a 20-foot setback for residential use. So you can see here the same for agricultural, non-residential, non-livestock, 150 frontage and 150 front setback for livestock, non-swine, and 300 feet for both for swine. And we had a 12-foot rear setback for accessory structures to the primary building. So there were some questions about, some concerns about the road frontage. Cindy weighed in on the frontage, and Carolyn has weighed in on the frontage.
250 foot. Huh?
Yes, so for residential and agricultural, non-residential, non-livestock, changing the frontage back, or changing the frontage to read 150 feet, and including a 50-foot setback in both of those uses as well.
50-foot setback.
Yeah.
Or front yard setback.
That's what's proposed, to return to a 50. That's Cindy's suggestion. And just to be clear, as I stated in my comments underneath, I am revising my recommendation regarding the frontage. I found Carolyn's is usually using the same logic that I did by diagramming how it cuts into the property and you know, behind it to be compelling. So I am conceding the 150 feet. The others, that's up to you guys. I don't see a compelling reason to require the 50-foot front setbacks. But that is for you guys to discuss and decide now.
Well, I have a point on the 50, going to 50 foot as opposed to 20 foot.
Can I just pause you there first, Bob? Can I just, with all staff seeming to be in agreement, I would move a vote to change the frontage requirements for 150 feet in both the residential and agricultural, non-residential, non-livestock uses.
That's
Also
just the
motion.
frontage.
Just
Just the frontage.
yeah.
Yeah.
Motion made by Chairman Brody Brown, seconded by Mr. Santos.
Yep.
Any discussion on that change?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mike Krogel here.
Okay, hearing no discussion, it'll be a yes to change.
Don't
Mr.
go
Lang-
anywhere. Go anywhere yet. Are we just, is this the R40 and R80 that we were talking about last week?
This is, yes, the Rural Residential Agricultural District. Yeah,
Because we were talking 100 foot on that, and now you're talking 150?
yes.
What about the issue about continuous frontage?
That was already resolved. So we have agreed
Well-
to
Solved on it.
address to make sure that it, either, I think we talked about a definition or something, but it doesn't need to be continuous.
Continuous, okay. And you were saying 50-foot frontage?
Yeah, that's something that will be addressed specifically in the definition. So if you look at the text of the draft, there's no place other than in the definitions where that is kind of laid out. So
Actually,
I have a note in my,
okay, but it's actually Article 5, second addendum, if you want to call it that, page 23 to 24. It says continuous zoning, continuous frontage.
are you talking about the current regulations or the proposed draft?
Current regulations state continuous.
Yeah, so that language was not carried on into this draft anyway, but
Okay.
it will be specifically clarified in the definitions. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you much.
Very good.
Okay, so to return to the motion has been made to change the frontage requirements for residential use and agricultural, non-residential, non-livestock use in this district to 150 feet. A yes will change it in the draft to 150 feet. A no will keep it at 100 feet. Is everyone clear on the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Lanky,
No.
Mr. Krogel,
No,
Mr. Werge,
Yes, for 150 feet, right? Of course.
That is the,
Santos.
yeah, yes is to keep one, or to change back to 150.
Mr.
I want
Santos,
150. Is it yes or no? Just tell me.
it's a yes.
Yes.
Say yes, Bob.
Yes. Friggin' confusing.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes, Alvin Hill.
Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. So the draft will be changed to 150-foot frontage for both of those uses. Now, Mr. Werge, I believe you wanted to comment on the setback requirements.
Yeah. The setback, I would go with Cindy's 50 foot, which is the present setback. And my reason on that, as opposed to 20 feet, is based on our roads themselves. Most of our roads are 30 foot to 40 foot wide, right? And
I don't think they're quite 40.
no, not quite.
I think it's
Generally, they're
around 28 and 30, I think.
Yeah, closer to, let's put it at
30.
30 feet.
Yeah, 30.
So when you want to expand a road on either by a subdivision, for instance, where you want to make the road wider,
Mhm.
then if you made it wider by just 10 feet, now the setback instead of 20 is 10. So the people would be right on the road. And our goal is in subdivisions to make, the road wider. We don't want a 30-foot road. There's no room for expansion. The other thing is, if you leave it at 20 foot with a 30-foot wide road, when the snow plow comes by, he's going to plow the snow right into your front yard, pretty much, or pretty damn close. So I think we should keep it at 50 feet.
Or at least more than 20.
Huh?
Or at least more than 20.
Yeah, I like the 50 feet.
Okay, does anybody else have anything to contribute in that?
why don't we cut it and go at 40 feet?
What was that?
What about 40 feet?
Like
That's twice as much as it.
Ira, you're
Well, it's
breaking,
better than 20, but I like 50, but I'd go with 40. That would work. I mean, but 20 is
20 is,
I like 50 foot.
20 is very close,
Yeah, I would agree.
but 40,
I'd compromise with 40.
What's that?
I would compromise with 40
I could live with 40.
or 35. 35 or 40.
Yeah.
No, 35.
I mean, for whatever it's worth, the point of the reduction is going toward the idea of reducing nonconformities, which was also the purpose of the 100. But Carolyn's diagramming of the 150-foot frontage was compelling to sort of move me away from that. But the purpose for reducing the setbacks in general was to reduce the potential for nonconformities in lots that already exist. It's an argument. If you find Bob's road clearance and snow argument compelling, that's fine. I can't say that I have strong feelings about it. The 40 is a good compromise. So you guys decide where you want to go with it from there.
I agree. I'll make a motion to have
I
the
could live with 40.
Okay, Mr. Santos?
yeah, I'll make a motion to go with 40 feet for residential, agriculture, non-residential livestock at front setback at 40 feet for both.
I second
I'll
that.
second.
Motion made by Mr. Santos, seconded by Mr. Werge to change the residential and agricultural, non-residential, non-livestock use front setbacks to 40 feet. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, so the vote is yes for 40 and no would keep it at 20. Yes for 40, no for 20. Mr. Lenke,
Yes, John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
yes.
Mr. Werge,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Hill.
oh, Alvin Hill,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What was the vote, Alvin?
no,
Thank you.
Alvin Hill.
And Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. So the front setback will be set at 40 feet. And then the
150 and 40, we're good.
150 and 40. And then the final discrepancy here would be from Cindy's recommendation to change the accessory structures setback. We had it at, so she, I guess, I'm sorry, Tira, help me out here. I'm just a little confused with like the red and the,
Yeah, mine's actually in black and white because I printed it out at the office. It looks like she was trying to cross out the note, which didn't get carried over into the draft, that accessory structures, as it's worded in every district, shall have a front setback equal to or greater than the primary structure.
okay, right, yeah.
So why don't you,
She's suggesting setting it back at, in this case, it would be 40.
Right. Is that accurate, Cindy? Is that what you're
yes,
suggesting?
that is accurate. Yes. So I make a motion that we set it back to the 40. Is that what Cindy's comfortable with? Yes.
Wait a minute, what's 40? You lost me.
Accessory structure to a-
We had previously, as a line item in the dimensions for the districts, indicated for accessory structures to the primary building, instead of a specific frontage, that it would be equal to or greater than the primary structure. And again, that was an issue addressing nonconformities. If you have an existing nonconforming house that is, say it's 30 feet from the road, and you wanted to have an accessory structure, it would allow that accessory structure to be level with the primary property. That was the purpose of that footnote.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like we legislated this a little bit, a lot early on. I think after a lot of really healthy discussion, we got to a place where we set, so again, that note that allows the accessory structure setback to be, as little as whatever the primary building is. So I would advocate keeping them as we had them. I think, like I said, I think we had a lot of discussion to get to that place. But if anyone sees a compelling reason to
Where,
change that.
where did we have them? Is that the number in the black, the 12 and the 20?
That's the side setbacks.
Yeah,
This
we're
is the
talking
frontage.
The frontage, the 50, the
Oh,
50.
50.
We're just-
Well, it'd be 40 now.
Well, it
No,
would be
40.
40 in this case.
yeah, in this case, it's 4. She's just making it consistent. So,
Yeah, the 50 would make it 40, right? That's
Yeah.
good.
Right. However, as it is, it's even, it's even with whatever the primary structure is, and I
But
see
what
no
if-
reason to change that.
But what if your primary structure's non-conforming 20 feet? Then you go on Bob's argument about the plow trucks and too close to the road, extension of the road. So now you don't have a house 20 feet away, but you've got you have a house 20 feet away, and now you've got an accessory building 20 feet away.
Well, if you build it there, then you'll have to take care of it. I would move mine back farther so I didn't have snow in my building. But if you want to put it there, then happy shoveling.
get into it.
If we've already got the house at 20 feet, what
It should be no closer to the road than the existing house.
which is what we have, which is what that
Yeah.
note indicates.
40 feet.
We're not necessarily 40 on that, though. We're saying
Okay.
any
Right.
that's existing.
Because Bob, if it's a non-conforming primary building, so if you've got a primary building that's 30 feet setback, what these proposed regulations say is that you could build an accessory structure with a 30-foot setback because the house is already at 30 feet.
Yeah, it's already not, yeah, all right, good.
Then it's your choice.
So are
Okay,
those,
does anybody want to make a motion here to establish it one way or the other?
I will make the motion that the accessory building be no closer to the road than the existing building.
motion
I'll
has been
second.
made? Seconded, made by Mr. Krogel, seconded by Ms. Langlois. So a yes vote is to keep the draft for a front setback for an accessory structure as written, no closer than the existing primary building.
That's a yes vote.
That's a yes vote.
Yes.
Mr. Lanky,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Werge,
Yes,
Ms. Langlois,
Charlie Langlois, yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Hill.
Yes, Alvin
Joseph,
Hill.
thank you, Alan. Joseph Prody Brown, yes. And then the remaining is the side and rear setbacks, which the existing draft has at 12 feet, and Cindy is suggesting 20 feet for a side and rear setback
For accessory structures.
for an accessory structure. Yes.
yeah, I'm good with 20.
Is that just to make it consistent, Cindy, again with the
Yes.
other?
Yes, it
yeah,
is.
okay. All right. I'm good with that.
With what?
20.
20.
Right, yeah, I am too. Change the 12 to 20 on the side and the rear.
All right, I'll make
Yeah.
a motion. I'll make a motion to change the side and rears on accessory structures to the primary building at 20 feet each.
Second that.
Motion made by Mr. Santos, seconded by Mr. Werge. Any discussion on the motion? Yes vote changes the regulation to 20 feet. No keeps it at 12. Yes for 20, no for 12. Mr. Lanky,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Werge,
Yes,
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Alvin Hill, yes.
Joseph Prody Brown, no. Okay, so the regulation will change to 20 feet for those side and rear setbacks.
Okay, look at the progress you guys are making. This is crazy.
We just took like 5 votes in 20 minutes. That's a record.
If I may though, Mr. Chairman,
Still on page 26, Article 4, Section 4.
Mr. Krugel's got something for you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Krogel.
I am sorry here. I am just looking for clarification. We have changed the frontage proposal back to 150.
Correct.
Correct.
During our subcommittee meetings previously, we had changed the side lots, the side setbacks from 30 or so to 25. Is that still to be the same?
We just made it 20.
20 feet, Mike.
So 20 feet would be for all the building lots?
Yeah, so Mike, what was just voted on was for residential frontage at 150,
Yes,
front setback at 40,
yes,
side and rear setbacks at 20.
Correct.
okay. I understand. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
All set, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. I wasn't sure what was being asked.
Not- We're doing good.
Okay, so page 26, Article 4A, Section 4, Agriculture, subsection A, farm stands and farm stores.
Give me a wave on my hand, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Wurge.
Thank you. I don't see the dimensions or even a suggestion of rear lots. Rear lots were suggested in a conservation development, but in the zones, we have to deal with the rear lots.
Bob, we can talk about that, I think, at a later point, because it's currently in the draft in that that section on conservation subdivisions. Carolyn has made the point to me about moving it again. It's always been an odd duck. So I think we can discuss that particular item later, since it's not in this discussion guide, but it does come up in order in the draft to discuss. I don't think there's any harm in getting to it later.
As long as we do.
Oh, we will.
I'm okay with that,
For sure.
but later is not never.
Not never.
Later is never, never. Not with me, Bob.
There you go.
Good,
Thank you, Mr. Wurge.
thank you.
So the next note is on the percentage of products which should be, which has to be sold from a farm stand and farm store. Our regulations put it at 50%, based on a recommendation from Joan Nichols of the Connecticut Farm Bureau. Cindy's comment was that it should be 75%.
What were her recommendations based on, Tara?
She had sent me a number of different towns who had litigated this specific issue, and you know, they, I won't say universally, but almost universally had that 50% level. And just, you know, as a person who's worked in farm stores, not a farm stand, not, you know, that were year round, that 75% could in fact be the thing that keeps a farmer who can put product, their own product, on their shelves for much of the year, could force them to close in the winter months. I think, you know, some of the points that you raised about Connecticut grown and this and that are valid points, but they are separate points. You can't buy in product and claim that it's yours, no matter where it came from. So I think that the point that you're making about the whether the Connecticut grown language and legislation is threatened is not an unreasonable one to make, but that is actually not zoning's place in some ways. But again, it enables a farm store to run in the winter, or may enable it, you know, when they are low on their own product.
Okay, so I think this whole section needs to be really looked at, because we're clumping farm stands and farm store. I just briefly reviewed it before the meeting a couple hours ago. Farm stands, you're looking at being seasonal.
Correct.
So being seasonal is somebody who, has a garden and wants to set up a table and a tent or whatever. To me,
Right.
that's a farm stand. And that should absolutely be 100% product.
Well, let's push it.
Um,
I'd go with the
so
75.
I think you need to separate those two. I think you need some more work on this because you're saying farm stores can go into commercial. What is a farm store? Is it gardening supplies too? Is it? I think it's just very, very convoluted, and I think you really need to take that farm stand and take it out of that and keep it at 75%.
Yeah.
Because then it's not fair to a commercial business that has overhead expenses, rents that these little farm stands wouldn't have. So you really need to, my feeling is you really need to separate that and do more of a definition, separate the two of them. And sure, farm store, well, the other way you have the farm store.
I certainly think it's legitimate to say a farm stand should have a higher threshold than a farm store. I
Right.
take your point there.
Yeah, I do. But when we get with these farm stores now, are they on the farm? Are they in commercial? They don't have to be owned by the farmer, and you're just getting into all kinds of stuff.
So I'll read the definitions that we currently have, and we will come back to them when we go over definitions, but this is how they are currently defined in the proposed draft. A farm stand is a structure which is not a permanent building, which is used for the sale of seasonal agricultural products. A farm store is a structure which is a permanent building, which is primarily used for the sale of agricultural products. A farm store must be under common ownership of the owners of one or more farms, but is not required to be on the site of a farm. And to go over what that was meant to cover in terms of possibly being multiple owners or not on a farm site specifically, that is addressing the possibility that a number of local agricultural producers could choose to co-op, and they may, in interest of not privileging one farmer over another, try to choose a neutral spot. It's still an agricultural enterprise, so that is the purpose of that. This is trying to enable our agricultural professionals or who exist or who may want to start an enterprise in Thompson to make that a friendlier environment to do so. And I feel this is another one where I feel like we had a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at a farm store, can I sell John Deere tractors?
Right. That's my point.
Pardon me?
That's my point. What can you sell at a farm store, and so how big are you going to do it in our the whatever we're calling it?
Well,
The bottom line is, I think you need to take farm stands out of that equation and treat them separately as far as zoning goes and as far as percentage of sales. The regulations that I looked at, reviewed before this, had up to 70-75%. So, and an example I'm giving is a farm store, and it's in my own town, but I can't remember the name of it. I drive by it all the time, but it's that farm store that's on the corner of Main Street and Front Street.
The Farmers Co-op? Cindy?
Yeah, Farmers Co-op. That's what I think of a farm store. And literally he could actually put produce in it and still it's a farm store.
Yeah, but no, so as defined, the farm store sells the products of the farmer or group of farmers. So to Bob's question, no, the farm store cannot send a cannot sell a John Deere.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've also separately defined agricultural, and therefore an agricultural product would be the product of that activity. So a John Deere tractor is not the product of an agricultural activity, although it is used in an agricultural context.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you just need to separate the farm stand.
Yeah,
and the
I
farm
agree.
store.
I think
I
we
agree
should
with
separate
Cindy.
them.
Separate the stand from the store.
Yeah, I think the farm
easy.
stands should just be not less than 75% of product shall be from an agricultural goods grown or produced on the owner's farm.
I second that motion.
Yeah, the farm stores,
Mhm.
I just want to change the word a little bit. I said not less than 50% of products sold shall be from agricultural goods grown or produced, period. Not on the owner's farm, because then it'll allow diversification of those agricultural goods grown from other people, including themselves.
I'm sorry, Brian, could you repeat that to me? I lost you a little bit on
Yeah,
that.
I'm just
How
taking
are you
out
proposing to change it?
the farm stores. I just wanted to say not less than 50% of products sold shall be from agricultural goods grown or produced, period. Just end the sentence there, because after that it says on the owner's farm, but that's not what's going to happen. It's the various farmers, including themselves, are doing that. Is that not right?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that actually weakens Cindy's point, because it is, it's cutting the level of those products down to 50%. So again, just using the example of a multi-grower co-op that decides they don't want to close seasonally, so how do they supplement that going into those winter months? So that gives you the leeway.
Yeah.
But the 50% says that that owner or those owners together must produce at least half in order for it to, and I think that gets more to Cindy's point about the unfair competition
Yeah.
between calling yourself a farm store and just putting it in the residential neighborhood, if you're then going to the produce market and,
Yeah.
you know, if you're buying 50% of produce and it doesn't have the specification that it is produced by the grower or the owner grower, then we're right back to where Cindy's got the objection, which is I could go buy mangoes.
Yeah.
And that is produce. That is an agricultural product, but it would not have been grown on my farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I would like to see is to keep the language as it is in that subsection 1, and apply it only to farm stores, and then add additional language to make it 75% for the farm stand.
I think that's reasonable.
Mhm.
But you guys must decide.
That was my motion. That is my motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Chairman Perotti Brown, seconded by Ms. Langlois, to keep the language and specify 50% 50% of products must be grown or produced on the owner's farm. And 75% for farm stand.
It's 50% for store, 75% for stand.
Yeah, and just included in that, I don't think I necessarily need to amend my motion for this, but if you want me to, I will. I think it should say owner apostrophe S farm or owners apostrophe farms, right? Just to include.
I hear you.
It's just the grammatical.
The construction of the language that we address in the first article includes the singular and the plural together, but in
Gotcha.
this case, I think it makes sense to separate them out.
Any further discussion on the motion? So a yes vote will change it for 50% for store and 75% for stand. A no vote will leave it as it is written. Mr. Lanky,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Crowell,
Yes.
Mr. Word,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes, Alvin Hill.
and Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. Okay, the next question is to Address the,
I think we just actually addressed this in the prior item, the
That's what I was
difference between the
wondering.
stand and the store.
Yeah.
and in the definitions as well, right?
Yeah.
Does anyone feel strongly that we need to address this further?
No.
No.
Okay. The next item is not one that requires our action. It's a, nor the next one on page 26 as well. The next item on page 27 is just a statute citation change. So our next item to act on is page 28. And this is right at the top of page 28 in your draft, Article 4B, Section 1, intent.
Joe, you didn't deal with the parking issue on farm stands and farm stores. Section 4A, Section 4, page 26.
Yeah, Tira's comment says that she's going to change it to read, farm stores shall submit a parking plan to conforming to the provisions of Article 5B, Section 6.
Yeah, but what about farm stands? Where are you going to let them park on farm stands? You're going to let them park in the street?
Nearest,
They do it anyways.
I don't know.
Great.
Do you think it's reasonable to require somebody setting up a little
And to have parking.
farm stand to require a separate parking area
No.
with a parking plan? No, that's
No,
so
not with the
for stores
parking
it
plan,
makes
but
sense.
to set up a parking area so they're not, to set up an off-street parking area.
No, not for a farm stand, for a farm store.
Well, a farm stand, I mean, you can have, okay.
I mean, have you stopped at farm stands?
Yeah, and block the traffic on the street, yes.
Well, you pull over to the side of the road, you look, I need to take a couple of tomatoes to go home. But the store is another thing. You gotta go inside.
Well,
or there's a
No, I
building.
understand you have to have a parking plan for the store, but on the farm stand, you're just gonna say, set your stand up and people can park on the road.
Yes,
Okay,
like they do now, like most of the world does.
absolutely. I did the other day.
So we're all in agreement that we all do it.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, so I'm going to move on.
I mean, I'm not saying it's right. That's what I'm saying. I look for a parking place off the street. So I'm
But
not
if it-
saying it's right.
If there's not a parking place off the street, do you stop?
Go to the next farm stand, it's right up the road.
I stopped, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, there does not seem to be a strong appetite from the commission to
Don't
Pursue
park
this
on my
further.
grass.
So then when the complaints come in that there's 6 cars on the road blocking traffic because there's a farm stand, then I look at the
We'll all
regulations.
go out there to see how good their corn is.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
probably what it is.
So then
If
I
the-
look at the
if-
regulations and I tell those neighbors that complained that there's no regulations that
regulations.
says they have to have off-street
right.
parking.
That's right.
Right, and
Yeah.
if there's 6 cars, they'll be selling out in no time, and by the time they can write it up, it'll be stand farm closed.
Charlene, you're forgetting my history.
Yeah. But, just from experience, I mean, we've all driven around the roads of Connecticut over the years in the summer. How many times have you been at a farm stand where there's 6 cars? Never.
Yeah, Cindy, I mean, it's
Maybe 2 or 3.
a serious question. I mean, is that something you get complaints about?
No, I don't think so.
I don't either.
I don't think this is going to create a boom in farm stands that's going to change that.
If they have a parking lot.
So I mean, I think it was a valid point to raise. I just don't think it's. I think we're looking for a solution in search of a problem.
Correct.
It doesn't exist. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
On to page 28, sir.
Page 28, Article 4B, Section 1, intent. So the intent statement is there to provide residential use consistent with the furtherance of the rural character of the town, protecting the town's natural resources for those areas served by public sewer and water. Cindy asks why related to rural character. Tira says the rural character of the town is everywhere, and so yeah, do we want to change this intent statement? Do we think this intent statement accurately expresses what we want for the common residential district? I know what I think, but I'm happy to let others of you share your ideas first.
Well, I think Cindy's point is valid. I mean, R20 is not rural. You know, they're small lots all jammed together. I don't see how that's got to do with the rural integrity of the town.
So let me make the counter argument there, Bob. Would you say that the town is largely rural?
Yes.
Would you say that the character of the town remaining rural would be assisted by having the area where we want to drive density defined?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. What it's saying is that all of the pieces of the town work together to further the overall character that we have in mind.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily hurtful to put rural towards the town's rural resources. But at the same time, Cindy's point is it's kind of like contradictory in a way, you know? I mean, where is it rural when you're on R20 lots?
So if you read the intent, it doesn't describe that district as the rural district. It describes the entire town as rural. And that's something that we want to protect.
Yeah.
And this district is created with the intent of protecting the overall rural nature of the town.
It doesn't hurt.
That's how I
Yeah.
It's still a dense area, and you can't, and I consider the town of Putnam rural, but I do not consider the downtown Putnam. I do not consider the north end rural. And so take that down to a smaller scale where you have your density. It is not rural. So
Right.
rural should not apply to that district.
And I repeat, the district is
Not
not
saying
described as rural.
Rural, yeah.
Town is described as rural.
Well, I don't have everything here, so, and I left, all the other stuff is at the office, so the intent of the,
Essentially, all you're saying is it's one town, and in this town, certain districts have certain functions. And those overall functions combine to make one town with an overarching rural character.
Hopefully. Yeah.
So among other things, it's acknowledging that it is one town, right? There's, you know, if we're going to get back to some long-standing arguments over the whole one town, 10 villages, and people treating people from other parts of the town like they're not even in the same town, and it's the right side of the tracks, the wrong side of the tracks. This is a unifying statement of purpose, saying that all of the various aspects of the town work together to create one desirable community that has different aspects.
I agree.
I agree. I agree with you in your argument. It's just that it does seem rather peculiar to call a very congested area of the town rural. And I think maybe I could live with leaving it the way it is, leaving it as it is, only because I don't think it hurts. It doesn't hurt anybody to call it rural. I mean, R20 is rural compared to 3rd Avenue and 54th Street.
That's for sure.
You know what I mean? That's where I grew
Correct.
up. That's where I grew up. So that's pretty rural,
Is it?
no matter how you look at it.
So do we need to
Brooklyn
make a motion
Brooklyn
on
used to
this?
be rural. I don't think you do unless you really want to articulate something else. And if there is something else, articulate it and I'll write it.
It's the area is a dense area. I mean, because you go further on in your dimensional requirements and you're even making it even more dense. So you guys do what you want. I just think I just think it's wrong. So that's what I have to say.
Does any member of the commission wish to make any kind of motion at this moment?
I'll make a motion to keep the intent as written for 4B Common Residential District.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to maintain the intent as written, made by Mr. Santos, seconded by Mr. Wurge. Any discussion on the motion?
well, I don't think it hurts. It doesn't hurt,
I
Great.
don't think so.
right? Doesn't.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion. Yes to leave it as is, no to continue discussing it.
Change it.
Mr. Lenke,
What was that again? You broke up there, Mr.
a
Chairman.
yes vote keeps the intent as written. A no vote continues this conversation. Continues the discussion to change it to something else.
John Bielanke, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Wurge,
Yes,
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. Okay, so now we get to the same page. The section of, or the table of permitted uses. Cindy, to her earlier point, says that this is not a rural district and would like to see farm stands and rural businesses, which are items 3 and 4 on the table, removed from this district. Here argues that a harmonious townwide rural character leaves us with no compelling reason to disallow farm stands or rural businesses.
I can go on allowing the farm stands, but the rural businesses, when you get into that section, I think you're opening up a big Pandora's box with that, keeping that in that district. And I also recommend, the only district I recommend the rural businesses to be in is the residential, which used to be 40 and 80. But it does not belong in any other district because you've got your corridor, you've got your mill, and they're all dense. And I do not believe a rural business belongs in those districts. And I think that you're just going to open it up for a lot of problems.
Tira, I'm sorry, can you, I'm not sure if you've got the definitions in front of you.
For which rural business?
Yeah, rural business.
This is a point that actually came up, that the very definition of rural business could be a little tighter. And again, it comes up in the special articles, which we'll probably get to later tonight, but let me
What's that?
pull
They
it anyway.
froze.
No. No.
Let me
You
turn
got,
to the full page.
John,
You got-
Mr. Link?
Guys, freezing up.
Who is? I am?
Joe, Mr. Perotti, the chairman, and a few other members.
That might be your connection, John? I'm not.
My connection's off.
No, you were clipping out a little bit just now, Joe. I confirm what John said. Okay, so rural business, as currently described in Article 5A, rural businesses are enterprises which may reasonably be pursued in a residential district, but which may be shown to cause sufficient intensification of use as to require review and approval by the Commission. Such intensification may include, but is not limited to, increased need for parking, increased outdoor activity associated with the rural business, or increased vehicle traffic. Applicants for rural businesses must submit a detailed site plan for review and approval by the commission according to the requirements in Article 3A, Section 4 of these regulations. The rural business shall be considered a permitted use following approval of the site plan and provided that the application meets both the standards for a home occupation and the following additional standards. And those standards essentially were just for off-street parking may be required, and the hours of operation are limited to between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.
And I changed that I changed that may be to must be off-street parking.
We'll talk about that later when we get to the article.
Right. No,
Um,
I understand that.
Yeah, based upon what I just heard, I agree with Cindy. I think the rural businesses should be struck from this.
Okay, so I guess I'll repeat my recommendation then and have a voice vote to allow or disallow each item. There's only two, so.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I will start with farm stands and farm stores, because now that we have.
No, we were only proposing farm stands in this
Stands
district.
only.
Yeah, I have no problem with the farm stands. It's the rural businesses throwing it all over the town.
But so here's my question. If I were a farmer and, I created a co-op with 3 or 4 other farmers in town, and we were looking for that neutral site that Tara is mentioning, why couldn't it be down? Why couldn't it be in this district?
Because it's a residential district.
So was the one that we just allowed it in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get that, but it's, what you're doing is just throwing everything into, you're having a mismatch of stuff in all these districts, and it's a residential density district.
So I'm just going to go back to an argument that or not even an argument, a point that I've raised a few times. Zoning is useful when it improves human life. Zoning is useful when, for example, you want to make sure that somebody doesn't put an iron smelter next to a daycare, but the everyday functions of life, zoning disrupted those. In an organically grown neighborhood, the kind that New England neighborhoods were all the way up until the early to mid 20th century. You would have a corner store, you would have a little tavern, a person would live next to it, and those were livable, desirable, walkable neighborhoods. Zoning put everybody in different areas. You can only live here. You've got to get in your car and drive to go to do another thing. And that is the damage from those ways of zoning is precisely what we are trying to undo. Now, that is not to suggest that every use belongs in every district. That's not the argument that I'm making. But the ones that are identified here, farm stands and rural businesses, are small enterprises that a person could theoretically run out of their house on the lot that they already have. That is what they are intended to be. And the rural business does require scrutiny by the commission, right? You get to say, this does not fit the format, change your proposal or we will disallow it, right? The rural business is a site plan review by the commission. So again, vote to allow, vote to disallow, but the entire purpose, or not the entire purpose, one of the overarching purposes of this entire exercise was to undo the fragmentation that zoning caused, not just in Thompson, but pretty much in every community in America.
Yeah,
That's
but
why
wait a
they're
minute, Tara,
unsustainable now.
Let me interrupt you, Tara. The counter argument to that is very simple. Very simple. I build a home, or anyone here builds their home, whether it's on an acre, a half acre, or 100 acres. okay? And I build that home. And now I've worked to build a house. And along comes some guy with a trailer, an old trailer, a rickety trailer, and he parks it next to my house, okay? Now, is that right? Well, if you don't have zoning, you can do that. Well, what does that do?
But we do
to the
have
house?
zoning.
What does that do to the value? What does that do to the expenses and the effort that I put into building that house when this guy comes by with a junk?
So we
That's the
do
purpose
still
of
have
zoning.
zoning. We're not actually proposing the elimination of zoning. We're proposing the overhaul to match it to what is a sustainable growth and development pattern.
Okay,
So
so,
in the description of home occupations, there is a whole list of things that you have to satisfy before we'll give you a home occupation. And then for a rural business, we tack on a couple of extras. In all of those, it states that you can't do something outside unless it's adequately screened, right? So you can't have whatever it is, unreasonable hours. I got to go back and look at it. You know, there's like 10 things that you have to satisfy in order to have that home occupation, plus 2 more for the level of review to get you to a rural business where the commission would be approving or disapproving. And if the conditions aren't met, you disapprove.
Well, yeah, but just
So
look at
what-
the guidelines.
so
agree-
what I got from what you
Brian,
said,
Just a
that-
minute, sorry. I got Mr. Words and then Cindy.
I agree with Brian in that we should leave the farm stands there, but rural business should not be in a residential zone. I'm sorry.
I have one thing to add as soon as Cindy goes too.
Yeah. thank you.
okay, so, and please take this for the visual that we see if you go down into a block in Queens. So what you said in the beginning, Tara, about opening up and allowing people to do what they want in the areas they chose to live, you will have, with this, I envision that you will have a block out of Queens.
Right.
You have everything in that. If you've ever been to Queens, you see they have everything. So that's what I envisioned, what you just said about opening up.
Well, wasn't it? Oh,
Okay, just go, Brian.
That's what I had to say.
Ms.
And I
Lyon.
have to excuse myself for a minute. Got to get my
My example, I was listening to her, and I'm not going to pretend that I know everything of the definition of the royal business, but the thing that came to my mind when she started talking about parking and various other things that kind of expand on the royal business was, you guys know the Buck Hill ice cream over in Woodstock there? What happened over there? There was a lot of controversy over that. They claimed it was a farm stand.
Yep.
Okay. And it became I would consider a rural business. Okay. And the traffic is unbelievable in this residential area. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen here, but I just want to make a general note about that. Hi, Charlene.
Ms. Lyon.
I have something to say. So while yes, Bucks did happen, but what that tells me is that people are looking to support their rural community. And so if there's a place that's opening, they're going there and they're staying in their town, and and if they don't have one in their town, then they have to go elsewhere. And I feel like Thompson, we're always pushing people out of Thompson instead of drawing them in. And
Yeah.
I felt like when we did these regulations, we would be making some changes to allow and allot for things to happen in the town of Thompson to help it grow. And
Yeah.
I don't want to keep putting, we talked about this, and this was the whole plan to make these changes. And if only we could have a problem like Bucks, but we don't.
Yeah.
There's no problems in Thompson. I would love a Buck problem. I would love it. It
Yeah.
would be so exciting because that means people are coming to Thompson, but
Just-
they're not coming, they're not staying, and we really have to see why. And I believe that this is one of the reasons, because we're so tight with everything that we're not welcoming people at all.
Yeah. Just to clarify my point, I agree with you, Charlene. I think we need to spend a little bit more time on the rural business definition, right? I want to understand that better than what we're winging data at each other right now about it. So,
Yeah.
but I support what Charlene's saying.
Listen, you got to consider your neighbors, Charlene. If you approve rural business and I open up a schlep store right across from your driveway, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy if it's an ice cream stand and it's bumper to bumper and you can't get out of your driveway.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened. to
Drawing people to Thompson is a good thing, but in the right area, not in the rural residential area.
We're not talking about the rural residential area. We're talking about the common residential area right now.
Right.
You've already approved farm stores in the rural
Yeah, yeah,
residential
yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Where cars are gonna be lining the roads to buy corn and peas and tomatoes. We were in love with that, so.
Okay.
So I repeat that you guys should vote on each of
Yeah.
these two items, just clarifying whatever the majority feels is fair.
Okay, so we will start with farm stands.
Now, we're talking about are we out of the rural residential?
Common residential district.
Yeah, we're in the common residential district.
Yeah, those are the little
little
pieces, the
oranges.
little
Yeah.
pieces of orange all over the place.
Exactly, yeah.
Most of
The
them,
little pieces of orange.
most of them are inappropriate in the corridor, right?
It's
Yes,
just outside of the corridor, right? The corridor is its own district.
it
Yeah.
goes along the corridor.
It goes along the corridor. Most of these, I thought we were still in the residential.
No,
No,
common residential.
Sorry, I apologize. No, I don't see a problem with having businesses in that corridor, whatever you call it, zone.
Okay.
Okay,
That's how I feel.
take it away, Mr. Chairman.
So I will make a motion to keep farm stands in the permitted use with a zoning permit in the common residential district.
I'll
I
second.
just have one question. Are we on page 34 and 35, the 4D business
we're on
development? No.
28.
Run.
Okay,
So motion
sorry, I went ahead.
has
Okay,
been
go
made
ahead.
and seconded.
she's in a hurry.
Farm stands in the common residential district with a zoning permit. Yes vote to keep them, no vote to disallow them. Any further discussion on the motion?
No.
Mr. Lang,
Oh, this one is a real tough one. It's giving me a headache. Yes.
Bobby Lenke, yes. Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Krogel, yes. Mr. Werge,
Yes.
Mr. Werge, yes. Ms. Langlois,
Yes,
Ms. Langlois, yes. Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Santos, yes. Mr. Hill,
Yes, Mr. Hill.
Hill, yes. And Joseph Perotti Brown,
Yes.
yes. Okay, I want to be careful with rural businesses because I want to make sure that the vote is clear.
well, do you think that Mr. Santos suggested we understand, is this where you're gonna explain it to us? Or does
Yeah.
he feel like he needs more time to look into this? And so we're not, I don't know if we're ready to say a yes or a no right at this moment.
I don't know if I'm on my own ship here. I don't know if everyone else was in agreement with me or not, but
Here,
Well, I apologize to everyone in that I did not realize we were in the common residential district
yeah.
discussing this. And I favored not having rural business. But what that I'm with Charlene on that. I would definitely want rural business in that zone. It's on Route 12, most of them. It's in the corridor. Why wouldn't we want business?
Tira, is it
I
reasonable?
thought Route 12 was the corridor business.
Most of them are in the corridor.
Yeah, this is just outside the corridor.
It's adjacent. It's adjacent.
Yeah.
All right, whatever.
It's where it's dense now, down in Main Street and all those
Yeah.
areas.
It also has sewer and water,
You're right, which
right?
is a big thing.
Municipal sewer and water.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even call it rural business. It's business.
Okay.
A lot of business there.
Okay, so actually, just 1 minute. Tira, is it reasonable to hold off on making a decision about this until? Is it reasonable for us to, you had said that we need more clarity on rural business. Is it reasonable to wait till we have that?
Sort of. I think I think you can make the vote provisional, Joe, to say if there is if we can refine the definition of rural business better, I guess, and we are going to discuss it. I mean, we can take it out of order and just discuss it now. I guess is maybe the
I
better
guess
course.
that probably makes the most sense.
Yeah, let's just take it out of order and discuss it now.
Okay.
Yeah, let's discuss it now, but let's take rural out of there.
Well,
It's
Mr.
not rural.
The issue is that we have a definition for rural business.
Yeah. So with, strike the word rural and just say business. How would we feel?
Except that it is a specific category of business, Bob, that we identified and named as a next level of home occupation. In other words, a home occupation is something that happens essentially 100% inside your home. However, you further define that. The rural business is a slight expansion of that. The rural business is the guy who wants to have the wood shop in a dedicated accessory building. It's the guy who wants to do car repairs out of his garage. It's a slightly intensified home occupation, intensified sufficiently so that you guys have to look at the application. In other words, if I come with a regular home occupation, I'm going to be, I don't know, what's one that would come? I'm going to do
Sewing.
remote. Yeah. I'm going to be a dressmaker in my house. People still do that, right? I'm going to do sewing and alterations in my house. That's a home occupation as we've currently defined it. It all happens inside my house. The commission never needs to look at it. As soon as I am sewing, but maybe I also have a small photography studio in a she shed, right? In an accessory building. Now you've escalated, and that might not be the best example, but the point is it's a slight escalation. This person might not be ready for brick and mortar. They can still run their business out of their home, but they are acknowledging and recognizing that the level of intensity is such that they're coming for further review. So that's the rural business. It's an interim step between home occupation and what you or I would define as a conventional business.
I just have trouble wrapping my head around something that's rural, the term rural, where you got sewers and water. That's not rural.
Be right back.
That's open for
I think
business.
possibly
That's
we
what
should be
have
less
business.
literal about the way we think about the word rural.
Yeah, I mean, what's that rural? It's in the corridor.
Brian, does that help you?
Yeah. In the background here, Joe, I got the definition of that Tira was reading earlier, and I'm good with this now. It said to avoid conflict with the character of the neighborhood, all the typical stuff. What was the word, Cindy, that you were looking for? You wanted may to be changed to required or something like that. And
For the parking, for the off-street parking.
Yeah. Okay.
Off-street parking.
Off-street parking.
Yeah, we're not requiring actual businesses to have to provide parking. We're requiring them to provide a parking plan. So why would you require more from a rural business than you would from a conventional business? A parking plan you can require, meaning we anticipate that there's going to be this kind of demand. This is how we plan to accommodate for it with parking, but we're not demanding that any business actually have a minimum level of parking.
Yeah.
I don't really, here's my opinion on the whole thing with all the zones. I don't really, you guys decide what you want to do. Number one, the rural business belongs in the rural district, nowhere else in town. And I've made that recommendation throughout the whole zoning districts. So I'm not really going to add anything more to it. You guys decide what you want to do. It just congests everything. A rural business in all the other districts is an unfair advantage to people who are the brick and mortar. So that's what I have to say throughout all of those districts. Rural business in one district, the rule. That's it. End of story. Maybe I might have suggested along the corridor because there's so much open land there. Maybe, I don't know. You have to go further on down.
Well, I think that's the problem is like now you're like, maybe, well, there's gonna be
Well,
things
let
that are
me
gonna
just
come up
check.
that
Let me
could be,
just check what I said in the Thompson, in the corridor. You know, without that large map, yeah, I took it out of the business development district. Without that, you know, without looking at a huge map with the streets and exactly where these districts are, it's pretty hard to, yeah, downtown Mill District. Don't we have some kind of corridor district here?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, so, and that's Route 12, right?
Yes.
Up to
Yeah, it's Route 12, south
to
of
one-
the on-ramp and north of the 131 split.
Yeah, right. And so you know, when you get onto the 131, there's certainly a lot of open land there. So I don't know how you're going to work that out, but whatever.
Let me rephrase the terms here. Maybe we just need to call it something other than rural, because people are getting hung up on this word rural in a literal definition sense that's not helping anybody.
Right.
Well,
Think
then
of it
keep it
as
at home
a second
occupancy.
level.
But it's
It's
more than
a
a home
second
occupancy.
level of home occupancy.
Yeah.
Right. So what's one thing that we just learned in this pandemic thing? People lose their jobs, they get stuck at home, but some people might actually have ways that they can find to be enterprising within their own properties, not needing to go out to a brick and mortar. Right. So we have the home occupation, which is a very simple level already. This is that interim tier. You know, if you want to equate it to some of the things that they say get missing in housing, it's the missing middle. It's, I'm almost ready for brick and mortar, but I'm not there. I can still do this out of my house. I can still take the risk. I can still control my own enterprise out of my home, but it's a little more, and I'm acknowledging, right? I'm a responsible business person acknowledging I'm taking this next step. This is us allowing our residents to take the next step, not telling them you can only be small or you can only have a storefront. There is middle ground there.
Yeah.
And that is what this is meant to address.
and
I
that,
think,
didn't
So
we,
I'm gonna, Carolyn,
Well, then broaden your home occupation and cut
Okay.
out the rural.
Carolyn,
Would it be reasonable to say small businesses? I mean, what would encompass what we're looking for without using the word rural?
exactly. Yeah, we need to keep sort of brainstorming
Yeah.
these ideas. Brian,
Yeah, you're right.
I read the definition. I'm good with the way it is.
yeah,
for
but
the-
I do agree that the name. Charlene, did you have a thing?
well, I guess, I mean, the home occupancy to me is it only can happen in home.
Right.
And then a big business would have to be out into the brick and mortar. So something mid, like a mid business or a middle of the, you know, like, and
Yeah.
it has rules, like it's different. The rules are different for the next step. It's kind of
But-
like the way we did our, when we wrote the regs, it's every step is different. So
Exactly.
this isn't a home occupancy, but it's not a brick and mortar. It's something in
Exactly.
the middle.
Is it too cute?
Can I make this suggestion, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Can I make it that you vote on the item provisionally, understand that we're going to find an alternate term for the word rural business, but that we understand what the definition is right now, and we're just going to retrofit a better language to it,
Yeah.
because that'll enable us to move on to the other articles here, and then, you know, maybe at the end of the night, because that's one of the last two things that currently in the order of discussion anyway. Maybe we can brainstorm that more fully there, so we can get through more of this now.
Yeah, but if whatever we change it to or don't change it to, there are parameters to a business, no matter where you have it.
Mhm.
There
There's
is.
parameters.
Correct.
So that's-
Parking, there's all kinds of parameters.
The definition is very clear in the write-up. It's very clear.
What is that?
Okay.
Hang on a minute there, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lenke, I would never go anywhere without you.
I hope,
What can I do for you?
wasn't the whole idea of the home occupancy is for people to start their little, whatever they're doing in the house with the intent that maybe that what they were doing in the house would expand to where they might need the room outside the house, like, you know, an offset building or whatever. where they didn't want to go to like an area on the main corridor or whatever and get a building, and then, they're thinking they're gonna be that big and it doesn't work out, where they could stay on their home property and do what they're doing and be sufficient. Wasn't that the intent, more or
Correct.
less?
That's literally what the idea of a rural business is. Yeah.
So then,
So rural business and home occupancy would be the same definition.
No. A rural business is like a home occupancy plus, because a home occupancy is
Additional.
in the primary structure. A rural
Right.
business could,
How about could we call it like?
Dave
midway
Eddy has a rural
businesses?
business. Dave Eddy has a rural business.
Yes, he does.
That's a rural business.
yes, he
That's
does.
a kind of rural business, right?
What
There
about-
are other kinds of rural businesses. A guy who does body work in his garage, that could be a rural business. But we're calling it rural business according to the definition. That type of business could also happen in this district, the common residential. I
Yes.
have a half-acre lot. I've got a house. I've got a garage. This says I can do that work in my garage. The home occupation, it's all supposed to be completely contained, right? This gives somebody, it's the mid-level of entry. That's all it's meant. So we can change the words from rural to something else. And we'll talk about that later so we can get through all the stuff in the districts. But the point is tiny, medium, and then you've got your wings out in the world. And Carolyn, the only reason I wouldn't call it small business is because small business has some legal definitions in terms of
Yep.
numbers of employees and stuff like that. So still got to be an alternate term.
Yes,
Why not just leave it at business?
yeah.
too broad.
I just did a quick Google search for whatever that's worth of rural businesses, and what we're talking about here, the definition, it makes sense to call it a rural business, but I'll let you guys do your own research on
So
it.
to Tira's point, I think the language that we'll use around it is a conversation we'll have later. Right now, I think it's important to understanding the idea of this middle ground business. Is that something we want to allow with a site plan in the common residential district?
Yes.
So I move.
You're going to get to vote on it in a second, Bob.
I move that we keep rural business in the common residential district with a site plan as drafted.
I second.
Seconded by Mr. Santos. Any further discussion on the motion?
Alvin Hill would like to make a suggestion.
Yeah.
Why not the term secondary rural business or limited rural businesses?
I like
Then
that.
we could put that in definition.
So again, I think that's a great idea. Let's talk about the language later. Let's just get on
The concept.
record. Do we want this? Do we want whatever we call it in this district or not?
Charlene Langlois, yes.
I have a question. When is later? When is later? I thought this.
Later tonight, just at
Later
the
in
end of the
this-
night, so we can get through the other issues in the districts.
Oh,
Because that was already a topic for discussion tonight. It was just going to come later anyway.
okay. Later is later on in the evening. All right.
Into this evening, yeah.
Correct.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Just about the time you go to bed, Mr. Word.
It's getting close, bud.
Further discussion? It will be a
And
yes.
you ain't gonna be far behind me either.
You got that
No
right.
further discussion. It will be a yes to keep it in, no to remove it from the district. Mr. Lenke,
John B. Lanky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Werge,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Alvin Hill, no.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. Okay,
Oh, I feel like I need a drink.
we are now into
Dinner bourbon.
page 29. We are now into the
I'm gonna unmute Bernie because he has comments in this section, so I'm gonna unmute him so that you have the opportunity to ask him to clarify himself.
So we are now in the dimensional requirements for this district. The draft has the minimum lot size at 4,500 square feet, with the provision that setbacks and building height requirements are met. Mr. Davis was concerned about that lot size. He points out that it perhaps not feasible for the, it's not feasible for construction. Cindy was concerned about the size of the lots. Mr. Davis raised a question about the tax implications. Tira, were you able to speak with the incoming assessor on that or no?
I was. So similar, and we may as well address that question first. I had invited him to come in tonight, but shockingly, he may have decided he had something else to do. I know we might have. So the implications for the tax base are kind of interesting. If you back it down to 4,500 square foot minimum, then much like backing down to the acre minimum for what was formerly R80, the individual property owners' property taxes would have a slight reduction for any lot over the size of 4,500 square feet, because your 4,500 is your base and then you get your excess. However, the other thing that would allow somebody to do is, let's say you have a half-acre lot. You can now subdivide. Each of those lots becomes more valuable to the tax base. So the individual property owner has a lower tax burden overall in larger properties, has the opportunity to monetize, and by potential subdivision within the limitations, obviously, of the rest of the district, and the parcels that are created have a higher value. So and this is pretty common. You have a denser area that has a higher property value because it is ultimately a more desirable area. You've got the walkability, you've got the livability. So this again goes to that whole, each of these districts has a character that contributes to the whole. If you're driving your density down here, ultimately it probably improves your tax base.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Davis about his comments?
What was his comments?
I'll read it for you. Unless Bernie would like to make his case himself, since I unmuted him. Bernie, do you want to come on this?
No, go ahead, Tara, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so the blanket 4,500 square foot minimum lot size is not realistic. That is about 1/10 of an acre, smaller than a 100 by 50 building lot. With the 100 foot minute, I'm going to leave this part out because this was an error. He was thinking we were suggesting 100 minimum frontage in this district, which we are not. I'm aware that the committee initially wanted no minimum lot size, but this is not the answer. Also, does this mean that existing properties with all the buildings squished onto 4,500 square feet are now eligible to call the balance of the land as undeveloped and therefore apply for a lower tax rate for all that land? So the literal answer to that question we just had, but that is yes. What does this do to the tax base of the town now and in the future? So again, to reiterate, individual property owners would see a slight tax relief, and if they chose to subdivide, monetize, the subdivided lots would have a higher value, so that would put them back at the greater rate.
Thank you.
Not that I think you're going to get a ton of calls for subdivision in that district, but it does give somebody the option to do it.
Could I just add a little information here? I went over the map over each of the sections that is actually in the common residential district. And I did a rough estimate of the acreage. And there were 5 5 sections. And it totals 163 acres, rough estimate. So that's about the size of the East Thompson Golf Course.
And
Put them all together. And this goes from like Buckley Hill down to where the medical building is, where the condos are up behind the medical building.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's already pretty, each of those is pretty well developed.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see a ton of call to make smaller lots in there, but it does give the option for a property owner who wishes to do so. It's a hypothetical more
Yeah.
than anything else.
And around sewer,
Uh,
water,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's where it should be.
Yeah.
It's where the, yeah, dense residential should be.
Right.
Well, what is the average lot size, say, in the North Grosvenor neighborhoods up behind the bakery?
Pretty small.
I mean, are they like 4,500 square feet, or are they more like 20,000 square feet?
The smallest one I found, which is the one that I retrofit to, was 4,800 square feet, 0.11 acres. And that's in, I always forget which village is which. I think that's Swede Village.
Yeah.
And it was not noticeably, I mean, it was smaller, but it was not, it didn't stand out as being an outlier when I sort of looked at the aerial of the parcel map. So I think you're looking at, quarter acres, third of an acre, all the way down to 0.11 was how that lot was
Yeah,
assessed.
so maybe 10,000, 8 to 12,000 square foot's the average, and somewhere in there.
As you move sort of out from that, whichever village, Swede Village or whatever, as you move a little out towards like where you and I live, they get a little bigger.
Yeah, I will concede that when I made this comment, I was under the misguided interpretation that this was the majority of the town that they were talking about, 4,500 square feet. It's so I'm not so opposed. I still think it's ridiculously small, but I think, as Carolyn said, most of these lots are pre-existing with houses on them already. So what's the difference?
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. And Bernie, they have sewer and water.
Yeah.
And there's sewer and water. That's correct. Yeah.
So is the commission content to keep it at 4,500 square feet as drafted?
No matter. Meet other parameters.
yeah, I'm off. Yeah, yeah, it's a good idea because we can dance with this thing all night.
Okay, I hear no opposition to keeping it at 4,500 square feet. Okay. Now we move to the frontage and setback requirements for this, for this area. When this came up, we talked a lot about using the proportion of the lot size to make these decisions.
It was just a way to meet the variability of the existing lot sizes.
Right, because there is such difference within these, the lot sizes are smaller, but there's a greater, proportionally, there's a greater variability of sizes of the lots. Again, I think we talked about it a lot. Cindy's recommending whole numbers as opposed to proportions. Are there any commissioners who strongly feel that the proportions that we set up aren't appropriate and would like to change that?
And well, Mr. Chairman, in regards to Ms. Dunn's numbers and everything, and to what we have, is there a big difference?
The issue is, right, that it depends on the lot. right? If we're in that 48, if we're in that 4,800 square foot lot, it's different than if it's a larger lot. Which is why we went with the fractions or the proportions really in the first place. And we did this to reduce non-conforming structures.
Was there, the side and rears at 12 now? Was there a reason for that?
But those are Cindy's suggestions.
Yeah. I mean, because Cindy, do you have a problem if we went back to 10? Because I mean, we're making a lot smaller, so at least we'll keep the frontage in the
Yeah,
front.
one
setback.
postage stamp is as good as the other.
Yeah, that's right. That's kind of what I'm saying. At least they can go left or right. We'll keep the front at 35 and the frontage at 100, but the side and rears will give them an extra couple feet.
So Brian, that 100 is a change.
You're cutting a lot into a small lot with those. You're cutting a ton into a small lot. That's why the percentages were the compromise.
Okay.
We're trying to zone around what exists.
Okay. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, and that frontage is not accurate. We chose a minimum frontage in this district of 50, and that was actually raised from 40, which is how I tried to retrofit it. Again, looking at the smallest amount of frontage I could find was 40. We adjusted it back up to 50 because of the requirements of whatever locating system emergency services uses is based on 50-foot increments, right? So that was a reason to continue a certain number of those nonconformities, right? So those people, they want to build something, they're still going to have to go for their variances. But the 50 is the number, not the 100.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything compelling they want to move on this section, or shall we move along?
Move along.
I'm good.
Yeah, I would say, I think, like I said, we talked about this a lot when we went through it originally, and I'm happy with it as it was drafted.
Yep. I'm fine. I'm good.
Okay. We're on page 30, guys. Come on, this is exciting.
We are on page 30. We're in a new district now. We are in the Thompson Common Village District. Home sweet home for me.
You're not going to get all salty on this now, are you? The stuff that's in here.
Yeah. And so this is about uses, right? So if we, again, the table of permitted uses, item 2, agriculture, and item 8, rural businesses. Should they be allowed? So as drafted, agriculture is permitted with a zoning permit. So that's no commission review. That would be at the permitting of the zoning enforcement officer. And rural businesses would be permitted with a site plan and approval of the commission. Do we want to keep them? Do we want to remove them?
Thompson Common Village District. And you got like a one-liner here. Oh, I see. You want to put that in that district, the agricultural stuff.
So as drafted, it's included in the district.
Well, you got, well, you have Fortdale Farm.
Well, you got room to grow anything.
Say that, Bob?
I don't know if it's appropriate in that district. There's really,
What's that? You don't know what's appropriate.
agricultural.
Okay, how come?
Yeah, I mean, but you can't put a cornfield there.
Well,
I don't
that
think
is-
you could grow a couple rows of corn.
That isn't the only thing that would be considered agriculture.
Let me ask you a question. Do you consider beekeeping to be agriculture?
Yeah,
Yeah, beekeeping can happen on an incredibly small parcel of land
you got
and
clover.
be
It
productive.
happens in this district.
Yes.
Yeah.
The bees don't care about districts.
The bees do not care about districts.
But they do care about clover.
Very clever with the clover.
Mm.
How much of the Thompson Hill district does it cover? Is it just strictly like where 193 and Route 200, Aquatic Town Farm Road,
Look at map.
Aquatic Road, and how far around?
It's whatever is defined as the historic district, which unfortunately, because I'm not at the office, I can't really pull up easily.
Does Fort Hill Farm?
Well,
fall
you
into that
got
area?
Fort Hill Farms just down,
So it's
what,
the yellow, it's only
300,
yellow.
400, 500 yards down the road from the center?
Yeah. What's the address for Fort Hill? Does anybody know? I'll look it up right now and see where it actually falls in the split.
Well, yeah, I'll just
It's
use it.
not, it's not in the Thompson Common Preservation District.
No. No.
Yeah, I would think that would be in the current R80, but I've
Yeah.
been wrong before.
Well,
Uh,
Down Chase Road a little ways.
not much, not that much out of Pembroke road extension.
I'm gonna pull up the parcel map. Somebody give me an address they know is in that district.
Mm.
What's the address of the Mason House?
Oh, is it, what's it, O'Leary Road? No, not O'Leary.
26 Chase, we're 26 Chase Road, so it's probably like 20 or something like that.
Marianapolis, what's their address?
26 Chase Road.
Okay. At least you know where you live, Joe. It's fine.
26 Chase. I'm gonna pull up the school and
Well-
locate from there.
Oh, well, we can go have a party.
You can't see this.
All
Yeah. All right.
right, so there's Thompson Green, there's Marianapolis Drive. This one must be the Mason House. 20, yep. Oh yeah, still shows as Mario Buada owning it.
Yep.
Thompson Common 80. So that's a 3-acre parcel. Next to it,
Oh, yeah.
I see a 5.5-acre parcel.
There's a 19-acre parcel right behind the inn.
Yep, there's a 5. I mean, so there are some not tiny parcels that,
Yep,
could
yep.
accommodate the activity. I mean, even a slightly more conventional form, something like a pick your own, a blueberry pick your own or something.
What's the driver's name? Right, I think it was 19 acres right behind the
Oh, no.
Lord Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit here that's,
This one.
not small.
So there's this,
Um,
this all of that.
Oh,
so in theory, the activity is possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
boy, because O'Leary's farm is right down the road, just down past, right
It's possible.
by on Chase Road, ain't it? Where the fire department is, you go down a little ways, he's there on the right.
It's not part of it, though.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, that's after it transitions from the historic district.
Okay, all right.
Big enough
So
to-
it's right back to the question from the last one. You've got two uses that Cindy is proposing you strike from the district. Those uses being agriculture and rural businesses. So if you want to vote on each of those uses again, if you feel we need the clarity, that's a good idea. If you feel you don't need to vote for the clarity, if you're happy with it the way it is, that's the only comment that came in under this district specifically, and we can move on to the next. It's up to you guys.
That is to remove agriculture and
Rural business.
home market.
Rural businesses.
rural
Cindy is
business.
suggesting that they be struck from that district.
As
No.
drafted, agriculture is permitted with a zoning permit, and rural businesses are permitted with a site plan and commission approval.
So they will still have the opportunity to go in there.
They do have, yes, they are allowed.
With a special,
I feel like it's appropriate for this area for agriculture to be included. So I'll make a motion to keep it as written for agricultural in the Thompson Common Village District.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Santos, seconded by Mr. Crowell to keep agriculture with a zoning permit in the Thompson Common Village District. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it's a yes to keep it as written, no to strike it. Mr. Lanky,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Werge,
No.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes, Mr. Hill.
Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. And then the next one is rural business.
Are we getting hooked up on this because of the wording again?
Nope.
Okay.
Whatever we determine, it will be named later. Will
Okay.
it be with a site plan and commission approval in the district?
Yeah.
I make a
I'm gonna
motion.
re-
Oh,
Go ahead,
Go
Charlene.
ahead, Charlene.
I've never made a motion before, so you might have to bear with me. I'll make a motion that we leave it as written.
Okay.
Second.
Motion
I'll
has
second. I'll
motion
second.
made by Ms. Langlois, seconded by Mr. Santos to leave rural businesses in the Thompson Common Village District with site plan and commission approval as written. Any discussion? Hearing none, it's a yes to keep as written, no to strike it and not permit it in the district. Mr. Lanky,
John B. Linky, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Werge,
No.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
No.
Joseph Perotti Brown, yes. Okay, pages. Okay, so now we move to pages 34 and 35. We are in the Business Development District, and there are several uses that Cindy recommends striking from the district. Agriculture, farm stands, agricultural ancillary entertainment-based activities, farm-based recreational activities, rural businesses, and student housing. Student housing.
Schools and student housing is how it's phrased, yeah.
Schools and student housing, including conversion.
And I will point out to everyone, because of the way this is copied and pasted in, just a reminder that residences are permitted in every district. If somebody says, I don't care that I want to have my house next to this existing business, that is their business. That is the principle on which that is why the rural businesses are also included there. Before that comes up
Change
later,
that for
which I know
rural
it will.
else, but we still.
What was that, Bob?
Cindy essentially made
I thought we were gonna
the
change
same point in
rural.
every district.
Yeah. We're going to change that to new business or small.
We're going to
business.
change the name. Yep, we're going to change the name.
Doesn't
okay.
change the business.
Agriculture in the Business Development District.
No, I don't think it should be there.
Can you tell me a little bit more about why, Bob?
Farming, it's ridiculous. Farm stands, agricultural, those, item 2, 4, and 5, and 7, Rouse. They don't belong there. Not farming and.
Well, let me use an example of agriculture that I believe fits perfectly well in the Business Development District. There is a company based out of Boston called Freight Farms. They build modular agricultural units for hydroponic production in old container shipping containers. I would, and this is the only district in which those are actually even allowed to be on a property, or this one and maybe the corridor. So that is an agricultural business that is not what we would conventionally think of, right? It's not Randy out there planting rows of corn. It's not somebody
Can I sell
doing
tractors there?
dairying.
Can I sell
Huh?
tractors?
No, an agricultural products are defined. Agriculture is defined, right? And you could sell, by the way, agricultural machines in the business development district because it's a business development district, and you
Okay.
could come in under a different kind of business proposal, theoretically, and that would be fine. This is agriculture, the growing, producing of agricultural products, food, fiber, meat, shellfish, hydroponics, aquaponics. So the point of this, and you've made this point yourself in other districts, Bob, is that we do not always anticipate fully how industries and businesses change. There is I won't say huge, like there's millions of people doing it, but there are thousands of people who are looking for ways to do food production in new ways. Some of them are technology dependent,
Well,
but they're
certainly
still
your point-
agriculture.
I take your point well. It's just agricultural doesn't sound like the appropriate word. You're talking.
But that's what it is. It's
You're
food
talking about
production. It's agricultural.
You're calling it that.
How it's defined.
That's how it's defined by the state of Connecticut.
Yeah.
You could have big containment tanks in a warehouse growing fish. That's agriculture.
Sure.
It's not how we picture agriculture, because we have a mental image of agriculture, but it is agriculture.
Well, I guess so. If you say so. It just doesn't sound right to me. I don't know, maybe another term. But
I don't know. If we're sticking with the branding committee, green and growing, I think why not have agriculture farm stands, agriculture ancillary farm-based recreations in the business development district? I mean, I feel like it should just be in every one of them. So
why not just have them in all districts?
yeah, all of them.
And they are pretty much allowed in all districts.
So
Yeah.
then,
Why exclude them here?
Just like houses.
Why do you have to put it in this
Just
one?
like
Sorry,
houses are allowed in all districts, right?
it's in all districts. Why is that an issue in this one?
Cindy raised the same points pretty much in almost every district, or variations of the same points. And her point has been the same throughout. Of course, she can make her own argument, but that she is viewing things in a more conventional sense, that, you know, agriculture is as you or I might have pictured it, with the guy with the fields and the rows, or the beefers, or the
Something
dairy
in the ground,
cows.
something that you grow is agricultural. I mean, you know, having a silo with some chemicals making flowers or making corn, I don't know about, but to me, it's nuts to call it everything agricultural. That's not agricultural, it's something else.
It is according to the state of Connecticut.
I don't care about the state of Connecticut, I care about
Okay.
the town of Thompson.
All right.
But anyway, it just, to me, it doesn't sound right calling it agriculture.
Well, you folks have the opportunity to vote on each of these items, and I would suggest that you do so if there is controversy.
Geez, I remember back in the day when we used to get the corn whiskey out of the bottom of the silage.
If there's no
Agriculture.
objection,
Cultural.
What?
I would like to move a vote. I will move that we vote on items 2, agriculture, 4, farm stands, 5, agricultural ancillary entertainment-based activities, 7, farm-based recreational activities, and 8, rural businesses together, unless anyone thinks they're drastically different and would vote differently on any one of those than the other.
I'll second that motion.
The motion has been made and seconded to consider the, yes to keep them, no to strike them from this district, for items 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, it will be a yes to keep those 5 items and a no to strike them from the Business Development District. Mr. Lenke,
JBL, yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Werge,
President.
You're explaining?
Mr. Hill,
He said,
Mr. Hill, yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Joseph Brody Brown, yes. Okay, so those items will stay. Next, just because it's so drastically different, schools and student housing, including conversion.
Is a school not a business? Or can be?
It's considered slightly differently generally. They operate on a different model than a for-profit business, most of them.
Yeah, unless they're a for-profit school, right?
That's right. Well,
Right,
that's what
except for those horrible things, but they do exist.
do exist. We could put a college there. That's for profit. A private one.
Some of them.
This is the only district we're allowing this, right? Or talking about it, right? Is that true?
No, it's an item in table of uses in a couple of the districts.
Okay.
This is another one where Cindy raised that she did not think it was appropriate in this district.
Okay.
So it is up to you guys to decide if you agree with that principle.
I'll tell you happily, it is in the Thompson Common Village District. Whew.
That's right. We're disallowing Marianapolis. We're
Golly.
Is there
Does
anything,
anybody have any strong feelings here, guys?
Yeah,
Well-
I don't have one.
Mr. Chairman, didn't we have a little bit of an issue a year ago or so about, I think it was off of, on the main corridor there, Route 12 area?
I don't know if we would call that school and student housing, right? That, I mean,
That was, somebody complained that too many students were in a house and they weren't a family, so went to the zone ZBA to appeal my decision.
it was like a rental issue.
It was a
more than-
rental unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where we had that, the problem is where are we gonna make that definition or define that?
Right, this isn't that.
Okay, all right.
Could be.
Actually, we're industrial.
Well,
But that, did that end up being the state definition though, did it not?
All of that.
What'd you say, Mike?
I said, didn't that end up being the state definition?
Yes.
That was a civil matter. That was
Yeah.
not a zoning issue. The
It was.
question before you is schools, campuses, and their dormitories. Are they things you wish to permit in the business development district? And I didn't copy the level of review, but off the top of my head, I think that's a special permit probably.
That is correct, with a special permit. The highest level of review.
okay, Mr. Chairman, what's your thoughts on it?
I see no reason to prohibit it. I see no reason to prohibit it from that district.
They got everything else. Now.
Well,
So what's your reason for letting it go into a business district? Can I ask that question? I don't know if I can ask that question to staff. I'm
Maybe
sorry.
my answer is I look at it the exact opposite way. Unless I have a reason, a strong, good reason to prohibit something from a section, from a district, why wouldn't I allow it? I have
Because
a
it's a-
strong reason, aside from the fact that allowing them, more areas to happen, could put my job at risk with competition. I have no compelling reason to disallow it from that district.
But it's a business district. What business does a school, what
I
is
mean,
it,
isn't-
housing and a school have in a business district?
Would
I
you
don't
agree
get
that a
it.
trade school would be beneficial to be located in a district where those trades might be practiced?
No.
No, you would say it would be not beneficial for students in the trades to be located closer to where they may ultimately be. You would impose a commute if that was proposed.
Yeah, we use Ellis Tech as an example. That's not in a business district. It's, Ellis Tech is, are you going to have a school like Ellis Tech in your community?
What
We
about-
don't know because nobody is currently allowed to propose it.
And no one's allowed to do it.
But somebody could be allowed to propose it in this. And I'm not just talking about a high school vocational program. There are all kinds of training programs that would still fall into the category of being a school.
Would that open us up to a reform school?
I don't think they actually have reform schools anymore. I think that those stopped in the 50s, Bob.
They don't have reform schools anymore?
Well,
I don't think
What do
they
they
call
call
them that anymore. I don't know what they call them now.
rehabilitation.
Rioters.
They call it public school. Public school is what they call it.
School is a pretty, school is a pretty,
A school is an educational institution.
yeah.
That's what a school is. A school is a place where people go to learn things. That's what a school is. And there are schools for adults, there are schools for children, there are schools for teenagers, there are schools for foreign students, there are schools for electricians. There are schools.
I think it's too general. But then again,
No one has demonstrated to me any strong reason not to allow it in this district, so I will move to keep it in the district as written.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Santos to keep schools, student housing, including conversion, in the business development district with a special permit. Any discussion on the motion?
Did you just said in the end, on the special permit?
Yes, that's how it's written. Yep.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
That's a toughie for me.
Hearing no more discussion, it is yes to keep as written, no to prohibit. Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Yes.
Mr. Lenke,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Werge,
yes.
Joseph Brown, yes.
I
Okay,
am so proud of the progress you guys are making. You have no idea.
next we move to the.
Yes, mother.
Are we still in the same district? Oh, sorry, we are still in the same district. We are at manufacturing. Mr. Davis did raise an issue here about what manufacturing means and tied to the proposed regulations not having an industrial district as such. He points out that manufacturing means a lot of different things. And he is
I'm
still,
trying to unmute Bernie, by the way, and I'm having trouble unmuting him. Bernie, can you unmute yourself if you wanted to chime in on this?
and he is still here if we have specific questions for him about the comment.
Here it is.
Okay, you got me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
So I want to make sure I'm characterizing your comments fairly, right? That you're concerned about the lack of an industrial zone, and that by including manufacturing in this district with a special permit, but it covers a whole lot of different activities. And Tira has suggested clearly defining light manufacturing and heavy manufacturing with the purpose of permitting light manufacturing with a special permit and prohibiting heavy manufacturing. So that's,
Sounds good. So we'll vote.
Yeah, I agree.
Carolyn, were you waving because you wanted to make a comment?
I think she was thinking of Carolyn's grandkids.
Sorry, I was waving at the kids. They were waving at me, so.
I mean, Bernie, did you have anything you wanted to interject here? I mean, it's an appropriate time to do it.
Yeah. I fear that this particular topic may be getting too light a treatment. It really is a much more serious issue than the various residential zones or the business district, the corridor district. If you go back to when zoning is brought into towns and voted in or not voted in, there were two ways that people looked at it. A, don't tell me what I can do with my land. And B, my neighbor doesn't have the right to ruin the quality of life and value of my property. And of course, those are the people who vote for zoning, and the others vote against bringing zoning in. The heart of the don't ruin the value, destroy the value of my property comes, I would say, for the most part, from industrial uses being planted next door to where clean business or residential properties lie. Granted, if you look at the zoning map, there's really very little, if any, difference between the old industrial zone parcel and the new, I lose track of what this is called, business development district.
Business development district, correct.
Right. You're really just letting more or less intense uses into the old industrial zones, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. The biggest problem I see is not defining industrial uses. I think one of the strong points of the old regulations, or at least the way they were years ago, and maybe still were, because I've been a little out of touch with over the last 10 years of the zoning book. There's been no real need for me to look at it over the past 10 years, probably. But one of the strong suits of the old zoning was that if it wasn't specified as an allowed use, it wasn't allowed. And it seems to me the scope of the new regulations throughout, and again, I'll say more impact where industrial is involved than the other zones, is that it's doing just the opposite. It's opening the door to everyone, granted with a special permit. But if someone feels that their use is allowed, should be allowed, and the zoning board turns it down, and whether it be the current board members or board members that are totally different 10 years from now, the town's going to get sued because that person has invested money in preparing their plans for approval, and there's potential profit for them down the road in having their business in that location. So I think the industrial needs to be extraordinarily strong as versus lightly treated the way I feel it is now.
So, I mean, how do you see, Bernie, industrial being defined? I mean, we did kind of just sort of slap it in there with manufacturing, although I think if you go further into some of the uses, it breaks down into medical and tech and some other things. I will concur with you that I think that a stratification of levels of manufacturing or industrial use is appropriate to further refine and define here. But I'm not sure if that is actually the full case that you're making.
I think you need to look at existing worst case scenarios and do the regulations as being proposed protect the town and the neighbors from those uses. Do you want Frito-Lay, a factory like that, a mile off the common? Because that's possible. Do you want the Reardon Road rock plant across the street from your house? Because that's the case for some people on Reardon Road, and it's the case the way the current industrial and soon to be renamed business development is scattered all over town. That is one of the biggest problems with industrial use in Thompson, is the fact that it's scattered all over town. And I would have hoped that the rewrite of the zoning regulations would have addressed that, but in effect, all it's done is renamed it. So
Yeah,
those are my concerns.
I have some I have some sympathy to that argument, Bernie. But the problem with it, other than as a hypothetical, is, as you had made, and Bernie, for those of you who don't know, Bernie and I had a pretty high-spirited back and forth via email over this, which was excellent, actually. You know, you had suggested, and I think it's true, that if the zoning in the first instance that it had been adopted had been done thoughtfully, then those uses would have been put at the perimeter of the town, or, you know, clustered in some way that was more remote.
It was actually
didn't
tried.
happen.
It was tried, but voted down, actually.
Right. Okay. So whatever the history of it was. So
Yeah.
that didn't happen. So now those businesses and districts already exist and have some of these uses in them. So
Right.
unless we retrofit to what we have, you're in the position of now doing something that I would suggest would be incredibly controversial and almost certain to fail, which is trying to relocate them to some. So now you're in the territory of saying, well, we think that this is the best place to put industrial, but hey, you residential rural, because that's the only place you're cutting in, right? That's the only place where you've got those perimeter properties are those residential rural areas. You're going to run into that same difficulty. So the placing of the business development district, I would argue, is logical in that some of that damage has already been done and can't be undone. It's further absorbed in some instances into the Thompson Corridor Development District. That's sort of that stretch of 12 that gets down toward Putnam where the water treatment plant is. And so there's already houses there. There's already uses there. It seems to me, and this is what I think the commission has to decide, is what's the level at which we cut off and say this level of intensity is just too much for this town because we can't cite it anywhere appropriately. That's to me.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
As I'm looking at the map, because I have it up on screen, the proposed map, I said for the most part, the current industrial zones are being renamed business development. However, there seems to be an exception to that, and that's out 193 to the old Johnson corrugated parcel, which I think was just, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not looking at the old map, but I think the Johnson industrial parcel off of 193 was pretty much just about the only industrial parcel out there. Maybe one or two more were attached to it. Now it appears, calling it the business development district, it's expanded all the way out to include the speedway and the golf course, which from the standpoint of the business development district is logical and makes sense. But if you're allowing any industrial use in here, it makes no sense at all, because that's heavily residential out there, and you're opening the door for anything industrial wise to go in there at the, and I don't mean to be condescending here, but at the whim of the commission with local neighbors trying to fight it. And
yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, Bernie. And just for whatever it's worth, that question actually came up with a resident in that area.
Yep.
So I looked, and the only piece that was changed was changing the speedway from residential to business development, to acknowledge that it is in fact a business. The footprint was exactly the same. Because I
And
did the
what was it-
comparison when this,
What was industrial is now business development out there,
correct,
with the exception of the Speedway.
correct.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So the footprint did not expand. And
Okay.
I would be very against expanding those uses further into the primarily residential. I think where we have expanded it is, aside from the inclusion of the Speedway, what was renamed Thompson Corridor Development. I think some of that does incorporate parcels that are currently named either commercial or industrial.
Right. So that's fine. Good. That's a relief. But again, the whole issue of better control of the what was industrial, now the commercial business district. Better control, I think, is necessary and important. And if the board is so inclined to totally get away from the way the regulations used to be of permitted uses, if it's not stated, it's not allowed, perhaps coming up with some way of more thorough control, beyond the point of bring us your idea, we'll listen to it no matter what it is, I think is necessary.
Yeah, and I certainly concur that the commission needs to decide, and we're using the term level of intensity. What's that threshold? Because at some point, there are some districts, most of them, where we have specifically prohibited certain activities. Those two happen to be gasoline stations and drive-throughs, because we have identified that somebody might propose those in any one of these districts, and we're saying, no, you can't do it here. So the question before the commission, I think, still hasn't changed. What's the cutoff level? How do we define, is it that we permit light manufacturing and do not permit heavy manufacturing? And what is the definition of light manufacturing? Which is a separate question. But I think if the commission can clarify their intent, I can write the definition, or, crib a definition, most likely, and then plop it appropriately into the table of uses with the prohibition of whatever that level is.
Yeah, I'd be satisfied with any further study on this issue.
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I'd like
Where
to.
do you want to go?
First of all, yeah, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Davis, for your thoughtful comments. I really, really do appreciate your being here tonight, for taking part in this and sharing those concerns. I definitely, I think that's the path that Tira has laid out, I think is a reasonable one to me. I think we all agree that there are levels of manufacturing activity that we don't want in these areas, and I think working to that definition would make a lot of sense.
I agree.
Agreed.
So could I propose that we, for the purposes of this discussion, make that split at light and heavy manufacturing, with heavy being prohibited and light to be defined?
Yes, that is exactly what I was just going to move. So that
If I can interject, there's a whole lot of more industrial use out there that doesn't fall under the heading of manufacturing. So that may be a little narrowing, using the term manufacturing.
We have included some other industrial uses specifically laid out, as I recall. Of course, again, I'm not looking at it, but I'm pretty sure medical research, other kinds of R&D, I'm pretty sure we specifically carved out as special permit activities already.
Yeah.
So I think it is a matter of a carefully worded definition here.
That's all I'm saying. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, research, development, and testing laboratories or centers, those are at a site plan level.
I have a question. Instead of having it under permitted uses, why not just under special permit? And
Every single.
It is
industrial
already,
use-
Bob.
Yeah, it is.
A
it's
special,
just permitted use.
Yeah, but this is
a
just
special
one
permit.
excerpt of what we're looking at. It's not the whole section.
So it is special.
A special permit, yeah.
Medical facilities and veterinary clinics are special permit.
It's just permitted uses. Permitted uses are permitted.
He's looking.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lenke,
uh,
the whole thing.
with the definition of, we're saying light, like light industrial, light manufacturing to, would be accepted, then heavy industrial or manufacturing would not be allowed. Now, what is what are we gonna say in the heavy is gonna be restricted? What type of manufacturing or what type of industrial? What are you gonna
That's,
consider?
Where's
that's
the line?
homework for me, John. I'm pretty sure that there are actual definitions of these things, legal definitions, so I just need to hunt them up.
Well, I mean, you know, if you might get a company that might wants to come in, that's it's a small manufacturing, but with this type of criteria, he could end up he or that company could end up in being in the heavy side, but it wouldn't be that bad of a company to permit or give them, the okay to go ahead and build or buy a piece of property or a building to do what they want to do.
A way to look at this may be if the use can be enclosed in a building with no noise or odors off-site or fumes off-site,
Or
as
affluent.
versus outdoor of a building, that makes it easier in a way. I mean, you don't want another Azid Road on your hand, and anything in the Putnam Industrial Park, for the most part, is just fine.
I think that was in the old regulations.
Yes, but the new regulations have a total different basis in how they're directed at these issues.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a little homework for me to add into the sort of final iteration of the draft based on these discussions, but that's doable homework.
and Tira, I feel like the best path right now is to vote on that next time we have one of these meetings with the language in front of us.
Okay.
That,
All right. I'll include that at the beginning of the next discussion guide then.
yeah.
I think that's a good idea, Mr. Chairman.
But I mean, it seems like those here are very amenable to that idea.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. And thank you,
Okay.
Davis.
Say night.
You're saying?
I'm gonna say night.
Oh, okay.
Oh, come on. We're getting in the good stuff.
I know. I'm gonna look for you. I'm running out of gas.
Well, thank
Okay.
you.
I think we still have a quorum if he leaves, right?
We do. But
Okay.
everyone else is hostage. The next one is.
Good night, Bob.
Good night, Mr. Thank you.
Hey, good night, Mr. Words. Pleasant dreams.
Yes, thank you.
Right, Mrs. Calabash, wherever.
Still in the business development district, commercial kennels are a special permit. John wished not to permit them.
I mean, he's not here to speak for himself, but I can tell you that I had a conversation with him, and his argument was that he wouldn't want one next door to where he lives. But that's not what's being proposed. They're only being proposed in the business development and I believe Thompson Corridor, Thompson Corridor districts, which are the ones where we've identified business uses. This seems reasonable, but it is certainly up to the commission if they want to prohibit commercial kennels entirely in the town of Thompson.
But we allow residential dwellings in every district, right? So you could.
That's true. That is true.
So in my opinion, I do not wish to permit commercial kennels just because of that fact. You could be living in the business development district and have a kennel right next door, and good luck sleeping at night. So.
All right, you guys should vote on it then, one way or the other.
Yeah, but
That's a can of worms.
I also wonder if you move into a business development district rather than a residential district,
Then you're accepting a certain amount of risk.
Yeah, I guess so, right? You know, if you're moving.
Right, because if we're doing our job by saying all of these things are permitted. If you want to build a house there, we're saying we're not going to stop you, but you also can't stop your neighbor from doing this thing.
Yeah,
Existing houses there, though.
That's exactly right. If there's an existing house, I'm thinking about the people that live there currently, and now all of a sudden a kennel's going to show up next to them. I don't know about that.
I'm sorry, Tara, didn't you just say, and I could be wrong, right, that this district is made up, aside from the speedway, everything else was already
Zoned industrial or commercial. But there are some houses in there already, grandfathered in houses. You guys will remember that you had that person come in whose property is industrially zoned and wanted a variance to build a house. He's already living there. He just wants to use the other half of his property. So that's a property owner saying, yeah, I'm in this industrial district and I wish to build my residence here. He's not asking to change the rest of the underlying district. I mean, that's a level of acceptance of risk. And now it's up to us in the rest of the, and Mike Krogel had raised another point, and I think it comes up shortly, it comes up under the next item, on how we do protect residences that are in there once a business tries to locate there. Obviously, we can't prohibit a business from a business district, but if we're allowing residences there, what is the concession? So that does come up under the next item. And, you know, I can't say that I have super strong feelings about commercial kennels. Some of them are terrible, some of them are great, but I know a lot of people have dogs and want to board them when they go on vacation. And, you know, if you strike it as an allowed use in both of these districts, then they will not be able to do that within the town in which they live. That might be acceptable. I don't have a dog, I have cats.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Krogel.
Are there specific like designs or something that would reduce the noise level or absorb the sound acoustics?
Yeah.
That is above my pay grade, Mike. I don't know. I mean, we do have language about buffers, landscaped buffers.
Yeah.
And as special permit items, you do have the right to request a larger buffer.
Or further setback?
Yeah, on top of the setback. That's actually right in the article about special permits that, you know, at least I think that's what the article that it's in, you know, the commission may impose a larger setback if it seems appropriate. And, you know, that could be an occasion in which it seems appropriate.
Do we have kennels now in Thompson, correct? Harlan Kennels over there on 21? Is that Thompson or Putnam? Or Morningstar? It used to be Morningstar.
Yeah, that's Thompson.
Morningstar. Yeah, they're just in Thompson.
That's the only kennel?
I don't know if that kennel's operating.
Yeah, I think they're done.
There were
Well, if they were an existing kennel, they would be grandfathered in regardless.
Yes.
I'm just curious, have we gotten any complaints from a kennel in the area?
There were a lot of complaints with that place.
Yeah, with Morningstar there were. I mean, there's a lot of records on that. I wasn't here, but there's a lot of records on Morningstar.
Yes.
What, like
Yeah, they were before the ZBA, I think.
Yeah.
barking or what? Like what was the?
I don't know. I just know that the folder was thick. Maybe you know, Alvin?
other than the lawsuit that the town went through.
And what was the
What
lawsuit based
lawsuit
on?
was that, Alvin?
That was Morningstar.
Sued
Because
for
of
what?
the acoustics. She was boarding more than 5. I think at the time she only was allowed 5, but it ended up many, well, more than 5, let's put it
Yeah.
that way, and making terrible sounds constantly, 24/7.
Mm.
So she was an irresponsible kennel owner. She was violating the
Slightly.
terms of her permit of operation, and she was hauled into court for it.
Yep.
Is that what
We
you
win
yeah.
or lose.
So the regulations were operating as they were intended to operate.
Right? Why don't we just not allow it? Send it to Putnam.
I like that idea.
Huh?
Okay, you guys have to vote on it, though, one way or the other. Make yourselves known for the record.
I would propose, this is Alvin Hill, I would propose that we eliminate commercial kennels, period.
I second that.
Okay, the motion has been made to eliminate commercial kennels from this district, made by Mr. Hill, seconded by Mr. Lenke. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I want to be exceedingly clear. This is a yes means no situation. By voting yes, you are prohibiting commercial kennels from this district. By
Both
voting
districts.
no- I'm sorry?
It's two districts. It's the business development and Thompson Corridor.
Okay, so I'm sorry, from both districts. Thank you. So a yes vote prohibits, a no vote allows with special permit. Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Langlois,
No.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Krogel,
Wake up.
I'm awake, I'm thinking. Don't you smell it?
God.
I don't know. Get back to me, please.
Mr. Lenke.
Yes.
Do you want me to vote first, or are you waiting? Are you ready, Mike?
I'll say no.
Joseph Purdy Round votes no. So it is a 3-3 vote.
So it failed.
That means, so it
So it-
fails
So it stays.
and it stays in
Mhm.
With special permits.
With a special
with
permit.
special
yeah.
permit.
It all depends on the
Okay.
laws.
Okay.
You
So
shouldn't
the
have let Bob go to sleep.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
no,
next,
he would have said anyway.
They come
it depends on what point in the meeting we were in, right?
to look at you.
Next point is
Yeah, you idiot.
what Tira was just talking about with Mike Krogel's comment about fencing and buffering and all that. Excuse me, I'm going to read the language that is currently in the draft, and we'll decide whether or not that appropriately addresses the issue that was raised. Notwithstanding the setbacks for the structure, the commission may require up to an additional 50 feet of buffer between a commercial use and a residential or agricultural use. The commission may require additional screening where it deems it necessary to protect neighboring properties from noise, light, or other nuisance. Such additional screening may include the erection of a solid fence or the installation of an earthen berm or other measures deemed appropriate by the commission. Any plantings so required should be varieties native to Connecticut, and then there's a reference to invasive plants. So Mike, you raised the issue. Does that language satisfy your concern and the residents' concern that was expressed to you? Or,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Is everyone else content with that as well?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Page 45, Article 4F, we're now in the downtown mill district.
The same point we've gone over before, of course.
So it's agriculture, farm stands, agricultural, ancillary, entertainment-based activities, farm stores, rural businesses. Should they be allowed in the downtown mill district? As written, they are allowed. Anyone have compelling arguments why they should not be?
Well, where are they gonna set up? Wow, right next to our father's table. How's that?
Hey, if it's business, we'll take it.
For the record, 5, 6, and 7, so the entertainment-based activities, farm stores, and rural businesses would require a site plan. Farm stands and agriculture would be with a zoning permit.
Don't you think that we've taken pretty good precautionary measures, you know, by we're not just opening this whole thing up and letting people come in and telling us what they're going to do in our areas. I feel like we're allowing them to come in, present themselves in the particular area that they're interested in, and then there always is a final say. They're not just coming in, taking over Thompson, you know, because where this board might want people to come in to do businesses, the next board might be a little less tight or more tight and be like, no. So are we making sure that we're allowing, one, people to come before us and we're friendly, but two, also protecting what we have in the town of Thompson and knowing that we can say no whenever we feel like it's encroaching on what Thompson's all about.
Yeah, and furthermore, the trend of on these items this evening has been to continue allowing them as written. I don't see anything in this district that makes this district any different.
I'm unmuted.
For that,
I'm unmuting.
obviously they're different districts, but I don't see any reason why we would change course with this district as opposed to the others.
Well, if you're in the mill, where's room for agricultural? I don't get it. What are you planning on doing with the mill? You're just letting everybody in?
It's not the mill building, it's a mill district that covers essentially from the pad of the Belding mill, the flat area, all the way to where 121 and 131 split. But as we have previously discussed, in the conventional understanding of agriculture, you're right, there's probably not enough room there, and also probably nobody's going to present it as an idea. But we cannot fully anticipate innovations in agriculture, which is why I cited this company, Freight Farms. There's 5 of those in the state of Connecticut right now, right? It is a use that is designed to bring food systems into denser areas, and it is agriculture as defined by the state of Connecticut. It's food production on that level. Can I just interrupt this so we can go back to our repeated, because Amy came in at my invitation because she's got something, she and I have something relevant just to this district, and it's really quick. It won't take but a minute. Amy, you want to unmute yourself and just give us the skinny on the rehabilitation area?
Absolutely, Tara. So the Board of Selectmen is in approval to move forward with a public hearing to discuss the rehabilitation area. And just to give you understanding, John Gumpert, the developer of the mill, had sent a request back in early April with what he would like to see for tax relief. It was more of a 20-year plan in phases, and that did not fit into the Connecticut general statutes. So our attorney drafted a memo to give us some options, and he basically came forward with 2 options. Mr. Gumpert was looking for 20 years in each phase. What he's going to be able to get if we establish this rehabilitation area is 7 years of a set assessment. So whatever the building is assessed at when we sign this agreement together, so right now it's $26,000 a year is what he'll pay for 7 years during the construction period. What I think is most notable about going this rehabilitation route is it more puts a timeline and more of a time constraint on him getting the work done. Because he'll only have 7 years at that $26,000 roughly assessment. And then after that 7 years, there will be increases incrementally of 10% annually, bringing it up to the full value post-construction. And that will not exceed 11 years. So 10% annually until 100% of such increase has been assessed. So that's basically what we're going to have to do, is establish a rehabilitation area. Terry and I discussed that it would probably be from Route 200 to 131. And we just have to move forward with a public hearing. And then once it's approved after the public hearing, he'll be good to move forward and get his financing in place. We'll be able to work for the whole package. I've also spoken to Paul Hopkins, our assessor, who's very versed in these types of arrangements, and he's ready to talk directly with Mr. Gumpert to get a feel for the value of the property after 7 years and the value of the property at the very end of it all. If that makes sense.
And just to bring that into context for why I asked Amy to come in after the selectmen's meeting to this, I'm proposing just a slight change to align our language. It's not a regulatory change of the Downtown Mill District to the Downtown Mill Rehabilitation District to show alignment with the resolution that the selectmen will be bringing to public hearing. So it's a technicality only. It has no effect on the rest of what we're doing. But I thought in light of that, to emphasize that the Downtown Mill area, which is the same overlap as the Bar Grant development area, Belding to the 131-12 split, it's all the same property. Every time we use that language, it's all referring to the same stuff. So I just wanted her to give that context fully.
Amy, Bernie Davis here. Amy, will there be any potential advantage to property owners who are going to fall in the overlay rehabilitation district to do work on their properties, like there are like an enterprise zone?
Absolutely. If I understand correctly, and I will double check with the attorney, but from my understanding, and I know that Putnam has adopted the same type of resolution for certain districts in their town. Yes, if you own, it's basically it's more focused on multifamily housing. So if you own a multifamily unit that's dilapidated and you want to rehabilitate the building within this district, you would be able to get the same advantages as the developer of the mill.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, it's favorable no matter how you slice it, guys. I just wanted to propose the change, and since they happen to be meeting on it tonight, and in the end, P&Z will have some kind of ratification element in this, which is not 100% clear to me, but I think essentially it goes to public hearing, it passes or fails, and then P&Z has to put their stamp of approval on it in the end. It's just a formality, but I just wanted to let you know that it is my intention to change the name of the district. That's all. Now we can start arguing about farms again.
Okay.
And thank you, Amy, for sharing that with us.
Yeah. And,
Okay.
and
So
one-
when
I'm
this,
sorry, just one more thing I wanted to share is that my hope is to get this accomplished within the next month and have it in place. I'm speaking with John Gumpert tomorrow morning to give him the update on what happened at tonight's meeting. And yeah, I'm excited.
Very much.
Okay.
Was there?
so
Yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
the question I have, is my speaker on? Yeah.
Yep.
So the question I have is, when these regs go to a public hearing, are we going to have a large map? So, you know, zoning district map, so that people can look at that and see, because I have with the exception of my saying, why are these allowed farm stores? That probably was a mistake.
No.
Between Belding and wherever, you don't have enough room up there for farms and agricultural auxiliary. And there's so little well, there's some residents for rural business. I just don't get why you're leaving that in a downtown mill district. It's density.
Again, we are anticipating that we cannot anticipate all innovations. I will tell you that there is farming being done in Detroit on rooftops,
Forget what you're talking about, with these containers and stuff like that. That's not what I'm talking
But why would I forget that? That is a legitimate business that I could.
How much room do you need to put how many containers? I mean, you're going to have containers in your downtown.
You could have one. You could have one.
Oh.
That's the whole point. That it is. It is designed for density, and it is a legally defined agricultural use.
Okay,
so the question is not why would you. The question is why wouldn't you?
Well, I will stay with why would you, because it opens up to so much other stuff. So, which you don't have room for. Okay, I'm done.
Food security.
I'm done.
Chairman.
Okay. So we were at page 45, agriculture, farm stands, and entertainment, agricultural, ancillary, entertainment-based activities, farm stores, rural businesses.
I think the farm stores was a mistake on my part because I can see a farm store in a mill development or something. So.
Okay. So as I had said earlier, the trend has been that we have continued to keep these in the districts when they've been brought before us. I see no reason not to do so in this district.
I so motion.
Okay, motion has been made to keep them as written. Is there a second to the motion? I will second.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Santos, seconded by the chair to include agriculture, farm stands, agricultural, ancillary, entertainment-based activities, farm stores, and rural businesses in the downtown mill district as written. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, it will be yes to keep them as written, no to strike and prohibit them. Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill, yes.
Ms. Langlois.
Yes.
Mr. Santos.
Yes.
Mr. Krogel.
Yes.
Mr. Lenke.
No.
And Joseph Brody Brown, yes. Page 46, item, I'm sorry, we don't, this is a question that we don't need to weigh in on, about Section 8 housing. The next one is, I'm sorry?
I don't think anybody said anything, Joe.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard sorry. The next one is gasoline filling stations and drive-through establishments. These were prohibited in the downtown mill district. John Rice wanted to know why. We had discussed this at a previous meeting pretty extensively, with the idea of walkability, safety, things like that.
Yep.
No further action is required unless anyone would like to reconsider.
Nope, I'm good.
As am I. Hearing no objection to keeping it as written, I will move on. So the next one is a question about the parking section in the downtown mill district. There are some additional standards, requirements for parking in this district, additional to what is listed on page 82 as the general parking standards.
I think I just made that comment because when people come in with an application, it just looks like it's confusing because you're going to jump from place to place. So that's it. It's a lot easier to guide a person if everything's in one place. So that's why I put that comment in there, just imagining, oh no, we got to go look here. Now we got to look here. So it's coming from a staff position of guiding a applicant.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, so
It's
yeah,
possible that they're close enough that it could all be in the special article. I think it was envisioned that there are more walkability, drivers in the parking section in the downtown Mill District. They may be very close.
God, I just got an invitation to go to Marriott Hotels. I'm going.
Want to get away?
Where?
I hung up on them.
Page 82. Sorry, I'm just trying to reference the.
I certainly don't want this meeting to come to an end abruptly, but I have 25% left on my phone. So I know if I go out, then you don't have a quorum. So find a place to end and let's get to there.
Well, let me say, we are just about at the 2 articles that were included, including the one that we absolutely said we were getting to. I think I can probably look at those 2 parking sections and see if they're significantly different. I would say leave it in, but if it's a matter of tiny degrees, I can probably address it all in the special conditions article.
Great. Without objection, the commission will authorize you to do so.
All right.
Hearing no objection. Okay, so the next.
Going on what Charlene said, my suggestion, because I was reading these HOMOC and all my work is at the office as to why I said what I said. And can we stop here? Because it is almost 9 o'clock, and then just take it up from HOMOC, because I think it's going to be, to me, it's going to be quite detailed in discussion.
I would prefer that if you want that stuff, I would prefer we table that item to next week and we skip it and move on to other things that are.
Well, that's it, that and rural.
Well, let's get to the rural, because.
Oh, no, you got a lot here. Trailers, mobile homes.
Yeah, so
it was 2 articles in the special provisions: the HOMOCs and rural businesses, and trailers and mobile homes. That was where I had locked it off.
So with with the rural business bit, we've accepted the concept of a rural business. And the question is right now, like, what do we call it, right?
I like what Alvin suggested, limited rural business.
Then you have to put limits. So you have to have more. There's more regs with that. Wouldn't there be more regs if you did limit it?
What about
well, we're established the limits with what the regulations are. These are the limits of those businesses.
We've done that.
Yeah.
What about, to mirror home occupancy, like property occupancy? Is that something that makes sense?
I would just put it all under home occupancy and just extend the perimeters of a home occupancy. I would forget the rural altogether. That's my personal opinion. One of the things that you understand, a few months ago, you said that the current, the CEO in the office can go out and give the home occupancy permits. And if there's issues,
Correct.
then I bring them to the zoning commission. Now you're extending that job that all rural businesses has to go to the commission. So you just replaced the work that the ZEO had been doing on home occupancy, and now you've extended that over, that they have to do that work under rural businesses.
So Cindy, I mean, to that point, that's exactly why we wouldn't just call them a home occupancy, because we would still want the home occupancies to be something that the ZEO can take care of unless there are any concerns, and that this additional level of scrutiny would come because it's an additionally intensive use.
So my point is, you didn't lessen the work. You're not, with this, you're not lessening the work of that office. That's what I'm saying. You're increasing the work of that office.
We did other things to take the burden of the work off you, Cindy, which was, we're not requiring you to go out there and take pictures of the interior of the house to prove that they're only using a third of it. That was the thing we said was a poor use of your time.
No, I still disagree with that, and that's when we get into the home occupancy. You know, my answer as to why I disagree, not putting a limit on the home, I think it's a very valid reason. So, but it depends on, you know, if you want to start the discussion on it or not, but it is late.
Good idea. Let's stop the discussion. Let's, we can sit here on this thing here for another hour and a half. I don't think we're gonna get much. I think we need to clear our heads a little bit for a couple days.
Yeah. The other, just one quick thing, because Tara will be working on this, is I had made the suggestion to separate them, not to combine them together, to give each one a different number. And one of the reasons for that, which I thought of when I was reading this again today, is that the home occ just goes right through the office. The rural goes to the commission, so that there should be a separation there. It shouldn't be run together. It should have its own section. So that's my comment on that.
Isn't that what we're trying to do? Make two sections?
Yeah,
Just the name is the problem. It has nothing to do with, I like the home occ being through the ZEO. It's done in the home. It's simple. She goes in, she does little check boxes. We don't need to sit there and go over her work that she's already done. That's done. Then the next one, the rural, which is giving us an issue, that I would want to go through checklists, but still go in front of the commission so that we are aware of what people are looking at and making sure that where they want to be and how to help them get there, that would be the work of the commission, no?
Right, and that's why I think they should be different sections. Right now, they're sort of, all right. I don't know how I worded it. I'd have to look to see how I worded it. But yeah, it's okay, whatever.
Okay, so before we go, we do have a regular meeting next Monday, the 22nd.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to have one of these meetings next week. I will say that the only night that I can do it is Wednesday, the 24th.
That's good by me.
If we think we can get a quorum.
I can see no reason why the 24th would be a challenge for me.
I'm good.
I'm looking at my calendar. Hold on.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with it.
Well, if everyone here can make it, that's a quorum.
Yeah, I'll be on vacation, but I'll chime in.
Woo! Dedication.
You are a peach.
Man.
Well, I think she's going down so that Frank can watch car races, so she might be thrilled to have something else to do.
Do we want to say 6, 6:30, 7?
6.
6 o'clock.
7.
I'm telling you right now, it's going to be weighty topics. It's going to be in order, special provisions. So that starts with home occ, which we obviously have a lot to discuss. Trailers, mobile homes, and then the big one, your gravelers.
Make it a long night.
Yep.
6 to midnight. 6 to midnight.
So
I'm down.
The next meeting of the subcommittee for zoning regulation rewrites will be Wednesday, June 24th at 6 o'clock p.m. I will now entertain motion for our final agenda item.
I will,
No, he doesn't have a car yet.
Mr. Lanky has moved to adjourn. Is there a
Second.
I'll
second?
second.
Ms. Langley seconds. The meeting is adjourned at 8:54 p.m.
Good work, everybody.
Night.
See you in a few days.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
good night. I hope you